We are breaking down the entire music production process, start to finish, in this new series that we're doing here. And today we're starting with step one, what we call the foundation. This includes your vision, the plan for the project, writing, and arrangement. The goal is a first raw, imperfect demo and a clear goal that you're aiming for when you transition to the next phases of the process. And in this series that we're starting today, like I said last week when we did the the overview over the whole process. Like I said, we're going to do all of the individual phases of the music production process. We cover them one step at a time. So this one is the first one, and it's going to be the foundation for everything else. It's super important because you cannot hit a target that you can't see, so you need to know what you're kind of aiming for. And you want to be able to make intentional decisions when you're recording, editing, mixing, and mastering. So you're not trying to, in these phases of the process, you don't want to be guessing and just hoping for the best. You want to make intentional decisions towards your vision. And of course, there's room for experimentation and spontaneous, creative ideas. But still, if you're being intentional, then you can use and apply all the skills that you've learned. And it's going to be a much more fun process. Also, the foundation is important because a great recording and mix won't fix a bad song. And on the other hand, a really good song and good arrangement will survive a less than ideal production. We keep repeating that over and over again on this podcast, and I'm not tired of saying that because it is so true. We just did an interview, by the way, with an amazing engineer and producer whose name is Connor Daniel, and he said pretty much the same thing. Like, he's working on major stuff, with very well-known big artists, and he says his words were, I think, the song is king. So there's always the song above everything else. And so let's not skip this. Let's do this as good as we can so that we have something good to work with. All right. If you're new to the show, welcome to the podcast. This is the Self-Recording Band Podcast. My name is Benedikt. I'm a mixing engineer. I work out of a studio called Outback Recordings. We're mixing hundreds of songs every year. We've been doing that for years now. I'm almost 13 years in this place, 15 years doing it. The past 5 or 6 I've spent mixing full time. Before that, I did full production, everything. And we also run the selfrecordingband.com, which is a coaching platform where we help self-recording artists make better recordings from their jam spaces and home studios. We do both of those things. And even on this podcast, even if you're not in our coaching community and you're not one of our members there, even this podcast, we're close to 300 episodes. I think this alone is a great resource with lots of value. So if you just go through our back catalog of episodes, you'll find topics on episodes on all kinds of aspects of the music production process already. So I hope you enjoy that if you're just discovering us. If you're watching this on YouTube, please know that you can listen on the go on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you are discovering this on a podcast app and you prefer to watch your content, then please go to YouTube and watch us do this. All right. So, by the way, I'm not always at this intro where I always say what I do and how many songs we mix. I'm not saying this to brag or just, there's one thing I don't say enough, and this is that both Manel and I, my wonderful co-host who I'm about to introduce, we both work on actual music all the time. And there are a lot of creators out there who give advice on the internet, and it might be even the right advice, but sometimes it's not, and some of them have never made a real record in their life. So I just say this at the beginning so that you know that you're actually listening to people with real world experience who do that every single day. That's just important to me. We might not always be right. There's always different ways to get there. There's rarely a right or wrong or black or white anyways. But what we share is from real world experience, from real productions with real artists. We've done a lot of those, and we hope you get value from this. So I'm not doing this by myself. As always, I'm joined by my friend and co-host, Manel Espinosa Berenguer from Spain. Hello, Manel. How are you?
Hello, Benedikt. I'm happy as always. And just in case you don't know me, I'm Manel Espinosa, and I'm a music producer and mixing engineer from Spain, always ready to turn your demos into finished songs through a lovely process. And I can't wait to start with this new episode about the foundation.
Yeah, totally. This is pretty much your thing because you are producing and not just mixing. And you are always very song focused, very artist vision, taste, style focused, and so this is kind of in your wheelhouse today. And I said before we started before we hit the record button here, I said to you that for today I have a clear job for you, and that job is to interrupt me as soon as you find a flaw or something you would do differently in how I outline the process, because and or anything really that comes to mind, because I really value your perspective, and sometimes you have a different view on things that I really appreciate, and I'm pretty sure that some of the things maybe you approach differently, or maybe you agree but you have something to add to this. So you are kind of I'm pitching this idea to you, and I want your opinion whether or not that would work or not, you know. So yeah, let's start with the foundation here. And this is a very controversial topic in and of itself, because I think most professionals would agree that it's important to be intentional. It's important to know what you want, to define your taste and style, and it's also important to have a good song, of course. I think that's the one thing that's a non-negotiable. But I also know, and I say it's controversial, I also know that not every artist is the same when it comes to, and not every producer is the same when it comes to planning a session. And so there can be some people who are successful with what they do, and they do a lot of planning. They know everything, exactly what they're going to do, what they want, how they're going to get there right away from the beginning. And then there's the type of artist or producer who gets inspired as they work on the music, and then they discover things on the go. They don't have to have the perfect plan right away, and both can totally work. It's not either or. The one thing I personally think that needs to be defined is your taste and your vision. You just need to know what you like and who you are as an artist in a way. If not, you have to go searching for that, I think. But in terms of planning, there's different approaches there. So let's see which one of those are kind of the non-negotiables and which ones are stuff that is like up to you. I can just say that all of what I'm sharing today, what we're sharing, is based on real experience from real projects, with real artists. It's based from all the mentors that I had, and I just know that the vast majority of records being made out there, it doesn't matter if it's major or indie, they go through a process like that, like the vast majority. There's always the outlier, but I tend to study what most of the people do who get great results. And I also, of course, document what I did that was working for me and that got the artists signed that I worked with, that, got my own band signed back in the day, that helped me accumulate all these streams and views and credits that I have. And yep. So I don't ask you to agree with me, but I hope you're open to these ideas. So let's start. So it all starts with your vision. I think that is, and this is something that's hard to explain and a little vague, but I think the vision should for what you're creating. Let's just assume a fictional let's assume some sort of project that we're going through that we want to do, right? Mm-hmm. So with the vision, I think it should include what kind of sonic aesthetic you like and what you would want for the record. So do you, and this can be very broad in the beginning, but things like, do you want super polished? Do you want raw, rough, real? Do you want an accurate representation of what's going on in the jam space or on stage? Or does it not matter to you and you want the most larger than life, as big as possible kind of representation of your art? These are the extremes, right? And then anything in between. But in general, the sound of the record, dark, bright, distorted, clean, these kinds of things, whatever that is. But that's part of the vision and your taste, I think. For me, when I start a project, I like to even see and hear about things that have nothing to do with the music. For example, when bands already have their artwork and they hire me to mix a song, I'd love to see the artwork, just because I see it as this holistic piece of art and I want to get a feel for the vibe of the whole thing. And sometimes seeing that informs some of the decisions or lets me get into a better, even more defined mood for the thing. So maybe you also have a visual concept, can be part of the vision. Maybe you see this whole thing already in front of you. Doesn't have to be, but could be. The message of the song, is there a certain thing that's important to you that you want to get across? Is it a personal song, a political song, a fun song, a whatever? Is there some sort of content that the music needs to deliver, needs to translate? The emotional impact, right? Is it sad? Is it happy? Rough, broad sort of things. And those things will inform your engineering decisions because you can intentionally make something sound like that. That's why it's important to think about it in the beginning. Now we get to the controversial part. So the reason why you're making the record, right? It's like, is there a goal in terms of like a success or commercial goal? Is it just because you want to be happy and proud of it? Is there, if you're being honest, what's the why? Why are you doing this? And, there's different answers for different people. And it's not wrong or it's not bad if your honest answer is because I want to be rich and famous. Like that can be an answer. And it's also not wrong to say, I don't care about that. I want to make something that excites me, But what is the reason you're actually making this? And maybe this tells you, you know what, I should fully lean into like the most crazy, weird ideas that I've ever had because my why is that I want to be, it should be an expression of myself and my soul and my emotions or my story. And I don't give a shit what anyone would think. And so I should not be afraid of bold decisions. And I should just do whatever I think is great and not be afraid. But maybe the goal is to be on a certain playlist one day or be whatever, like a very specific kind of goal. And maybe then it's worth thinking about, what all the other bands sound like on this playlist, I'm just saying, I don't know if that is a thing, if you can really make that happen, but different goals for different people.
I think that if you are a bit more experienced, you can be more precise with these things, right? But maybe you are in a point where you imagine your sound like another band that you like, and then from there you can get help from someone who can tell you what do you need to get that sound. Like maybe I like the guitars from Linkin Park, but how do I do that? Maybe you don't know at the beginning, right?
I agree. That's a good point. That there's a difference between more established artists or experienced artists who have already put in the time to define their artistic, identity, their sonic identity. They're more clear about those things. And maybe you're in a process of figuring that out. Maybe your first couple songs are all going to be wildly different until you found your kind of voice, and and it can change over time. So yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. So basically, you're saying, don't stop here or get stuck because you feel like you don't know what you're going to do yet. Like you can definitely move on and just explore that. Yeah. Then there's a thing I'd like to do, and this is kind of an exercise where you can try to imagine what happens right after the release so that you can then reverse engineer the whole thing. So, and again, you don't have a crystal ball where we cannot predict if something is successful or not. People want to make you believe that it's possible, but it's not. But what is helpful is to like kind of envision that. So what happens like right after the release? What happens 3 months later, a year later, 2 years later? And what that exercise does is it will push you to do better and go the extra mile. So for example, if you say, it doesn't guarantee success, but like if you say, okay, when I release this in an ideal world, if I do everything correctly and I put in the work also to promote it, or whatever your goal is. But if you say, just as an example, once we put that out there, our existing fans, they're going to love it. They're going to share it. When we pitch it to playlists, we have a good chance of getting into those playlists. When we send it to promoters, we'll have an easier time getting shows, whatever. Or maybe when we release it, it's going to be this like crazy reaction because it's so wild and out there and people have not heard this before, and they will like react to it, and some will hate it, some will love it, but it's going to polarize. You can imagine all these scenarios. And when you do that, also like, like I said, how will the record be received? All these things. If you do that, then you can think, okay, for this to happen, at what standard does my record need to be? Because then if you're being honest, if you have these goals or you dream of these scenarios, but then in the production you're going to just half-ass everything and you're going to be lazy and you're going to just do the bare minimum and you're going to make something that is more going to sound like a basement demo, but not in a good way, like something where it's clear that there wasn't enough effort put into this, then your expectations or hopes and dreams are not aligned with what you're willing to put in. And so having this visualization always pushes me to do better. If I have this plan for my band and I'm like, okay, I want to do everything I can to at least give it a chance. And I know that in order to achieve that, I have to do certain to give it my all. And I'm not talking about perfection or over polishing or any of those things, because I know people are going to hear it that way. I'm not saying that. I say make the best version of the thing I want to create and don't cut corners and not stop until I'm 100% happy. Because if I want to increase the chances of this thing happening, I just need to give it my best, like a professional would do. So this is why I like this kind of exercise, and because a lot of people will realize that their expectations are not aligned with how they want to approach the project.
Yeah, actually, I had an interesting request a couple days ago of an artist who told me that he wants to get his, like, this song he wants to work on into Eurovision.
Oh yeah, the song contest.
So I guess there's a production standard, like a high standard normally, right? When songs get to Eurovision. So yeah, you as an artist, you have to take that into account. That if you want to get there, you need to get a high quality production. Yes or yes.
Yeah, I agree. That's interesting you say that. I had a request a month ago. I'm still talking to this artist, figuring out how serious they are, and like he's a little unsure about a couple of things. But he's a Canadian, and he wants he wants to be considered for like a Juno Award. That's kind of his dream at some point, which is the equivalent of like it's the Canadian Grammys, pretty much. Like, okay. And I don't actually know how that process over there works and all that kind of stuff. But like we talked about the same thing. I was like, I have no idea if it's going to work. I have no idea how unrealistic or realistic is this going to be for you in this case. But what I like about it, and that's why he did it, it's not that he really, I mean, maybe he believes it, and I don't, because it's an unknown, unsigned artist, right? It's not but he said, more than thinking realistically that I'm going to get a Juno Award, why I come up with this is that like, I want to see how far I can push it to be as good as possible. And even if I fail, I know I give it my best because I have this goal that I can aim for. And I just know that I won't stop until I'm at that standard, which is pretty much what you said there as well. If I know that I want to be submitted, I want my song to submit to one of these things, there's no cutting corners, right? And so that sometimes it can helpful to have these like wildly out there kind of goals. So yeah, and if no commercial success is part of the goal, it still is cool. Like if you imagine what happens right after the release, maybe you want to show it to someone close to you or whatever, and you hope that it really hits them emotionally. You ideally you want to show it to someone, it makes them laugh or cry or whatever, and it gets a certain thing across. And if that is the goal, you have to do whatever you can to make it emotionally impactful. You cannot control how the person reacts, but you can make your song as emotionally impactful as it can be. And there's various ways to do that. And that goes back to once you know that, you can be intentional in your production decisions. Yeah. So then there's questions like, is it going to be a label release or self-released? So, are you going to do everything yourself? Are you going to hire someone to help you with promotion? Are you going to shop? Are you going to be shopping for a label? Again, there's a certain quality standard maybe required, but there's also other considerations because it affects the entire production budget. And even if you do it yourself, there will be some sort of budget. Someone needs to make the records. Maybe you need to buy gear if you do it yourself. Maybe you need to invest in your skills. Maybe you need to bring in an expert, but there's going to be some sort of budget for every project. And a lot of people forget the promotion and marketing budget or what it costs to make records at the end of it. And so if that matters to you, think about what you're actually going to do. Is it all going to be self-funded? Are you trying to get someone to help you? Are you going to hire someone? It gets even more expensive. That's just should be part of the plan. And then you need to prioritize what are the parts of the process that matter most to you. So yeah. So this is just all part. There's the artistic vision, but then there's the kind of vision what the record should do for you as an artist, whether that's a career goal or a personal goal. But like, why? What is the goal here? And it can just be plain fun, and that's totally fine. Like just know what you want to do. So what I like to do is I like to define these kind of goals. I like to write that stuff down and do and I do that with artists as well, not just for my own stuff. I like to sit down with artists to talk about these things and ask them about these things. Sometimes in the process of doing that, they really realize what they really want to do, and we try to write everything down, and then we try to put dates, on a calendar for when we want to reach each of those milestones, and it just becomes more tangible and real that way. It's just like what a producer also does at a professional studios. They plan out the project, they put the right team together, they communicate with everyone involved, and make sure that the end product is there at some point. And I'd like to be really precise with how I say these goals. Like, I don't say one day I want to have this record, or like in sometime the next 5 years or whatever. I'm pretty precise. I like, okay, next year May we're going to be done, and in September we're going to release the record, something like this. Yeah, so, and at the end of the day, I think it's good to think big, but be somewhat realistic. Like, have big goals, but don't make it so wild that you immediately don't believe it yourself anymore. If it's so crazy that you don't believe it yourself, it does nothing for you. If it's like, it can be crazy to a degree, but there should be part of you that thinks, you know what, maybe I can achieve that. So now, the one big thing, we talked about it with Jesse Cannon, and then we talked about it with Connor Daniel also, is the whole question, like, is it worth thinking about an audience or not? So is it worth thinking about who it is for, or should you only do what you care about? And over the years, I've gone back and forth between this. I used to be a believer in that there's value in thinking about an audience, and if that is a goal of yours, to be in front of a certain audience, to think about what might work or not work. But I kind of changed my mind there to a degree. It kind of depends. I think nobody has a crystal ball. I think nobody can predict if something's going to resonate. And I think you should always lean into who you are as an artist and express yourself. That's my opinion. But I think there are a couple of exceptions where it's worth thinking about it, maybe, depending on your goals. Like I said, if it's a very precise thing and your quote-unquote audience is a certain type of playlist curator, maybe it's worth paying attention to what they like. I don't know. But if you do it for the art and not just for a specific goal that you would be willing to do whatever for, if you do it for the art, and that's most artists, then do whatever you like. Do whatever, and the irony is that most of those things will become more successful than the ones that have tried to make the perfect plan for an audience. So I think if you're authentically your own, and you tell your story the way you want to tell it, and you lean into who you are, that's the essence of art, and that's what will resonate with an audience, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah. In this regard, my question is, Benedikt, do you think that if the Beatles had been thinking about an audience, they would have done so many amazing, crazy albums? Or Linkin Park, or I don't know, Dream Theater, for example. But at the same time, I've seen also, like, I don't really know if they if they had this thought process, but I like metalcore / metal, whatever you want to call it, band that's called Trivium. And they had this, this thing where they started to experiment in some albums. People didn't like that, and they ended up kind of going back to their essence. But I don't know if that was like a planned thing, in a way that they went like, yeah, let's go back to what people are expecting or whatever. But what I mean is that, as always, there's no black or white. There's always fine lines in between, and bands that I'm pretty sure that they've done every single album thinking about the audience, and it has worked for them. And also bands that have done something different, and it has also worked. So, as also Jesse Cannon said, we don't have a crystal ball, and like, who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have a definite answer for that.
No, I think
would
nobody
say,
has.
Yeah, I would say just do whatever you want. But
Yeah.
yeah, it can also work when you don't do whatever you want.
Yeah, I think nobody has an answer, because if we did, like I always say, like if we had an answer for this, we'd all be multimillionaires making number one records all the time, which is not the case. And it's like, I'm just careful with this, because there might be, if you analyze, and I know our friend Blake does a kind of a study on this. It's like, if you analyze all the successful hits over the last, like, I don't know, 7 decades or something, and you analyze all those songs and the productions and whatever, you will, as with always with these studies, you will find common threads. You will find common things that they have in common that they did that, and then you can say, like, is that like coincidence, or is that a part of the reason why all of them were successful? And people have tried to dissect and study that for a long time. So I'm not saying there is nothing you can do to increase the chances of it being successful, but I also think that the whole point of making art, that's what I'm saying, is like the whole point of making music and art is to make to express yourself, to tell a story, to create something from where there was nothing before. And I don't know, and like this whole, I think that aiming for a certain result, thinking about what other people might think of it, kind of defeats the purpose of art in a way, and it makes it less exciting by default. And I think we resonate with authentic art much more. And so that's why that alone is a good reason to really not care about this, in my opinion. It's the difference between making a business plan and creating art, to me. Those are not necessarily the same thing. And so, yeah. But like, all that to say, up to you if you want to think of an audience or not. If it helps you, if you think you can do something to increase your chances to reach your goal, do it. If you just want to fully lean into who you are as an artist and into your own vision, do that. I think that's the best approach. But like, yeah, I just want to bring it up. Either way, you need a clear vision in some way, shape, or form to be able to answer this one question. And that question is, what does our record need to sound like to make all of this work? That's the reverse engineering question. Like, whatever I want to achieve, whatever I want to do, whoever I want to be, what do I have to make this happen? And some people, you can plan it all out and then start from there. But you can also ask the same question and do the same kind of work by just playing and letting the music inspire you. You can also absolutely just jam and let whatever is in you come out of you, or you can start writing on a blank piece of paper, writing down some words, ideas, and thoughts in an unstructured way. And then at some point along the way, there will be something where you're like, that feels great. And then the vision forms. And it's like, oh, if I do that and then I create it into this actually sounds really cool because it makes me so sad. And then if I combine it with this story, this will be really strong. And then your vision for the song starts to develop as you do the art, that's totally a thing. But at the end of the day, at some point, there will be this kind of vision, because later, when you go from this initial creative phase to the crafts phase, where you go to now we know what we have a song, we have a strong thing here, let's now capture this so that it works. When you transition to that phase, which is the recording, editing, mixing, mastering part, at that point, you'll have to have that vision, because otherwise you cannot make good mixing decisions or engineering decisions. In the beginning, you don't have to start with that vision, but it needs to develop in that creative process, so that when you go and engineer and turn the knobs, you can do things to enhance that. That's the whole point of mixing. The whole point of mixing is not like achieving some number or some like adhering to some sort of rule. The goal is to take what's there and make it even stronger emotionally, to enhance it, to make it work better, have it more impact. And that, therefore, you need to have this vision. There's nothing harder for a mix engineer than a band who sends you like raw tracks and says, do whatever you want, whatever you think is best. Like, I want you to tell me what you want, and I want you to make decisions while recording that communicate that, because I could, like, it's not that there's this formula that you mix every song like that. You make decisions to enhance what's there. So yeah, just have at some point know what you want, and that starts with your taste and vision. All right, cool. The whole point of this first phase is also, this mantra is like, done is better than perfect, and just move fast. Try stuff, have no rules, everything goes. In this phase here, it's not about the perfect takes, it's not about the perfect sound, it's not about the gear at all. It's about exploring, trying things, focusing on the song, the message, the chords, the words, all of that. And don't make it as simple as possible for you. If the gear gets in the way and you find yourself going down rabbit holes, as soon as you open up the DAW, record it on a phone. It's fine. Or on something, whatever is the least amount of friction that helps you be most creative and focus mostly on the song and the art is what you should do. And you can try wild stuff there. It's not yet about making it sound great. That's important here. Then you got to be clear about the role, if you're a band especially, about the roles you're going to be playing. But even if you're doing it on your own, you're gonna be aware of the fact that you are doing a bunch of different jobs all by yourself if you're a self-producing, self-recording artist. So you are the songwriter. You are the musician who's playing it. In many bigger productions, those are not the same. Not all musicians write their own songs, but you do in most cases. You are the producer who has the creative vision, the big picture, the goals in mind. You bring the team together. You keep everyone focused. You never lose perspective. You think of this role as like a movie director. So you have to have this big picture view of the producer. You are the engineer, the one who's actually turning the knobs. Those are not the same in the classic meaning of the words. You bring the sonic vision to life. So someone writes a song, someone plays the song, someone has the vision for it and brings it all together. And then there's the engineer who executes that vision by turning knobs and capturing it. You need well-developed hearing and understanding of what the producer is actually going for, and in that case, both of those jobs are you, and it can be hard to not get too close to it, not go down technical rabbit holes when you actually should focus on the song and vice versa. And then you do all of the stuff in between. There are assistants, runners, people who wrap the cables and plug in the mics and do all that kind of stuff. And that can take you out of the flow, but somebody needs to do it. Somebody needs to label the tracks. Somebody needs to do the tedious stuff that is necessary to not make it a mess. So somebody needs to do that job. Then there's mixing and mastering. You're doing all of those things, and you should do all of those things well. And the easiest way to do that is to separate some parts of the process, or at least give each of those roles their own time for a little bit of time. Just think, okay, if I look at this from the engineer's perspective, let's focus on some of the technical stuff. Where do I put the mic? How do I angle it? Which mic do I choose? How do I EQ this? And then sometimes you have to step back and be the producer. How does this feel? Does this have the right impact? Is this aligned with what I had in mind to begin with? Then you have to be the musician. You're okay, forget the technical stuff, forget the production. Now I'm only focusing on playing the best possible take. And if you do all these roles, if you want to do them properly, you need to give each of these space and time, and you need to be able to switch between them without too much setup cost. And if you switch too frequently and you try to do it all at the same time, you're gonna cut corners somewhere. And so this is just something to keep in mind. This is very hard to do, but also kind of becomes easier if you just think about all the things that need to be done no matter what, and then trying to give each of those roles a spot, a space and time. If you're in a band, you can assign roles and tasks to different band members. Maybe you have someone in the band who is the creative mind, the visionary, who always knows exactly where the band is going, what it stands for, what the message is. Maybe someone who's really passionate about that expression, And then maybe you have a very, technical person who loves to be the engineer and nerd out about the gear and all that. Maybe the two can work together beautifully. Maybe you have one of the guitar players who is absolutely the best technically, and maybe you can have a conversation whether or not it makes sense for him or her to play most of the parts if someone else might struggle with that, if you're results oriented. You can talk about these things. Maybe someone is a good songwriter. Maybe someone else and not the singer is actually better at writing lyrics. Who knows, Mm-hmm. So double down on your strengths, eliminate the weaknesses, and get in the zone, focus, and don't worry about the other stuff for a moment. Try to avoid the distractions. When you are in producer listening mode and you're just figuring out how does it feel, how does it make me feel, ignore what the meters say for a moment. Ignore how much gain reduction you see on your compressor or whatever. Don't be an engineer. Listen. Turn off the screen if you have to, right, for a moment. So this is just big picture stuff that you have to think about in the beginning, be prepared for, and maybe even assign roles. And your bandmates got you, right? If you have someone who's better at something than you, trust that person. And maybe don't think you have to do it all yourself, And or if you have friends or mentors or whoever, you can bring it onto the team. And some of these things might change and vary throughout the process, but all of these are important. The analogy here is like if you had any operation, any bigger project, if you have a business, if you have a small business, it might just be you. If you're a freelancer, designer, engineer, or anything, somebody needs to do accounting, somebody needs to do marketing, somebody needs to make the actual work. There's these different roles, and it might just all be you. And same is true for a music production project. Somebody needs to do it. The next part of this big picture thing here first is something I call the 6 big questions to ask yourself. And there's going to be, again, some controversial thing in there that we kind of already talked about, but maybe it matters to you. So the first question is, why are you doing this? Like I said, just love to release songs and be on stage, want to do music full-time, earn a side income, leave a legacy, make someone laugh or cry or whatever. Why are you doing this? Second question is, what are your specific goals and what do you need to create in order to give your song a chance to achieve those? Who is it for? That's the part that we can argue whether or not it's relevant. Mm-hmm. Who is going to do what? The roles within the band or the team. Do you need outside help? Everything yourself? Those kinds of things. How are you going to do it? Are you going to record everything in the same spot, or would it be a cool idea to record the drums in a better space? Go to the studio for drums, go rent a cool, crazy space to record something. Sometimes it doesn't have to be expensive things. Once you start thinking about those things and you start thinking about outside of the box, you might find super affordable or free options that you haven't considered. Why not go and use this empty garage to record a weird, really echoey thing that you want to have on the song? You don't have to do it all in the jam space. Why not go to this big place to set up the drums if you can? Maybe you have access to some cool other space or thing. And if you start thinking about these, sometimes options come up that you haven't even considered. Most people just default to their bedroom or their jam space when there are so many locations that you could potentially use to create and capture different textures and stuff, or to just get in the mood. You can rent a cabin with your buddies, for a weekend or a week or something, and go outside of your own spot that you're usually in to just have a different perspective. So just think about that. Might be easier than you think. Maybe you can rent cool things that you would never buy, but it's not that expensive to rent them for a week or so. So just think outside of the box. Think about how you're going to do it. Come up with a budget. Come up with clear steps. Write it all down, what needs to be done, so you don't run into a situation where you run out of time or out of money and then it gets frustrating. Then when will it be done? Is there a deadline or not? Is there a self-imposed sort of deadline or a date that you want it to be done? Does it help you to have some pressure, or does it actually get in the way? Does it matter to you when it's done? If it matters, do you actually have it on your calendars? Because if you don't, you're just talking about it, but it won't happen. Like if you say, we need this record next summer, and then nobody puts it on their calendars, you won't have it next summer because life will get in the way. And so just, follow through with that. But yeah, ask yourself these things. Why are you doing this? What are your goals? Who is it for, if that matters? Who is going to do what? How are you going to do it? And when will it be done? So we're already getting clearer here. So now we go to your thing, Manel. We go to writing and songwriting and lyrics. So on that topic, we just released, by the way, we released a brand new course that's part of what we offer inside of our coaching program, the Self-Recording Syndicate. Manel just did a phenomenal course on writing lyrics. It's called Lyrics That Land, and it's a course that shows you how you can make your words that you use for your songs more impactful, how you can communicate your vision better and all that. And so this is part of what our students get, our members get in the coaching program. I'm super stoked about this. So yeah, why even worry about lyrics? And this is a question I have for you, Manel, because I mean, this sounds like a stupid question, but on the other hand, I've seen the argument a lot that people say, there are so many successful songs with like really stupid lyrics out there, or I don't even care about the words, I just like the melody. I know a couple of people who think like that, who tell me like, I don't care what they're saying, I don't even understand it, it's a different language, or even if it's in our own language, I don't care. I just don't care about the words or the message. I just care about the melody. And I want to ask you, Manel, why do you think it's worth worrying about the lyrics, even if you're not trying to make a deep political or personal whatever song? Why does it matter?
Well, just because the same way you've said that there's a lot of people who do not care about the lyrics, there's a lot of people who really care about the lyrics. And actually, that's the first thing that they listen to. Like, for example, my mom. My mom, when she listens to my songs, she cares about the lyrics, and everything else, it's the way you dress the lyrics, right? But so
I like that.
That's the value. Like, we don't need to like generalize, But there's always gonna be people who can or who will value the lyrics a lot. On one hand, but I don't think that's even the most important thing. The most important thing is that lyrics are just another tool that you can use to be creative, to play with that, just like you can do with your guitar. With your lyrics, you can make more impact in your song, or you can help like stressing the topic that you chose for your song or whatever. So it's just a fun tool that you can use, but you don't have to use it that way. Just the same way that you don't have to use your crazy guitars. You can make a song with no guitars, and you can make a song with no lyrics, right? So it's a tool.
Yeah, I agree. And I think even subconsciously, when people say they don't care about the lyrics, subconsciously they do. And even a stupid song might work because of the quote unquote stupid lyrics, because it might make it fun and easy to sing along, or it just because of the fact that it's so stupid, you listen to it more often because you can have a laugh about it. Or I don't know. I think even subconsciously, it just matters. And even if you don't understand the language, if it sounds good because of how the words are arranged and all that, I think that matters. I can listen to songs in languages I don't understand, and I can still tell if it resonates with me, like just how it sounds in terms of the rhymes and how the words sound, or if it doesn't resonate with me, that it matters.
I can listen to German songs for a good while and not understand a single word. Only when they say genau, then that's I understand that. But the thing is that I think that with these things we tend to sometimes talk about this as if it had to be a fixed thing, And for example, I'm a person who I can enjoy listening to German lyrics or German music, and I don't know what they are saying at all. And at the same time, I can listen to a Spanish song and understand every single word, and I also like that. I can like both things. It's not like you have to choose a team and that's where you are forever. Like, so
you're right.
Lyrics are a great tool to create impact, to create emotions in your songs.
Yeah,
it's your call if you want to use them or not. But yeah, I think it's fun to use them.
Yeah. Yeah. So on my notes here, I have like, you want your songs to move, touch, and influence people. And I think that's easier to do with words than without words. It can be done without words, for sure. Like anyone who's ever listened to classical music, for sure, this can move and touch and influence people. But with modern sort of music, words make it easier to build a connection, and it's an important tool. you ideally want people to connect with your music. You want them to react to your music in a good or bad way. Like polarizing is good. Like not everybody should like your songs. It's actually a good thing when a lot of people say they hate it. That just means that some people might love it, others might hate it. I think the worst thing that can happen for any artist is that the majority of people will be like, yeah, that's good, I guess. That's kind of the worst. You want enthusiastic people who love it, and others who say like, no, I can't stand this. This is like a good spot to be in. The middle is where it's like it becomes irrelevant. And this is not just true for music; it's for everything in art. And so yeah, if the message is clear, you can emphasize that through your melodies, arrangement, and production decisions. So it also sometimes it can inform the rest that's going on. It makes it actually easier to make sonic decisions. And at the end of the day, lyrics, music, and production go hand in hand in creating this desired impact. And I want to share 2 quotes with you that I have from people that I really admire as writers and like songwriters and just people in general. One is, I've talked to both of them, known them personally. One is Greg Benedikt, who is a friend of mine. He's the vocalist in a legendary hardcore band called Trial. He's also in Between Earth and Sky. And he is an author as well. He's written a phenomenal book that I'm going to link in the show notes here. He's just great. He's like in the hardcore punk world, kind of. He used to be, or he still is, a legend. But he also is a phenomenal speaker. He's done a TED Talk. Actually, he coaches TED Talk speakers. Like he gives he's a speaker coach, a keynote speaker. He talks a lot about creativity, creating things, like writing is his thing. He's like super intelligent, and I just love talking to him. And so his book is called Reclaim the Moment, 7 Strategies to Build a Better Now. I can highly recommend it. It's awesome. But that's not the point here. I just want to shout out my friend Greg. But what he said to me was, when we talked about the topics of lyrics, there's a whole podcast episode that I'm also going to link below that I did on my former podcast that I no longer do, but I had him on there as a guest. And we talked about songwriting, and he says a couple of great things in there. And one of it was, write your truth. Write about things that you believe, things that you feel, things that you think about, things that you see. Because inevitably, somebody will reflect on those lyrics and see something in them that they can relate to. So it goes back to not thinking about an audience. It goes about, writing about things that you believe, your truth, your story, what you feel, what you see, what you think. And it's very likely that somebody else interprets that in some way that they can also relate to it, because we are humans. We have experienced similar feelings and situations, So So that's one thing I love. The other one is from Joey Cape. He's the singer and songwriter in like Lagwagon, Me First, and the Gimme Gimmes, his cover band he's in. Is a very popular one. A couple of other bands, but most people will know him as from his band Lagwagon and his solo stuff. And Joey Cape said to me, writer's block is another way of saying you've stopped writing. I write all the time. In this conversation we're having right now, you might say something, or I might say something that I think is profound, and I will write it down. I spend a lot of time writing little things on my cell phone that happen in conversations over a drink with a friend. I like this too. It's kind of this idea of just capturing what happens, and there will be good things that pop up if you just pay attention, you know?
Yeah, I think, every day we have moments, we have conversations, we have, I don't know, things you see on your phone or maybe on TV or whatever, that if you work on like collecting little ideas, something will come up. Most of it will be trash, probably, but that's the point, right?
Yeah, totally. And also, don't be afraid to use things as starting points that have already been done before, that like use inspiration. Start with like completely openly, unapologetically copying things if you have to, and then take it from there and turn it into your own. That's not a bad thing if it helps you get started, right? You can turn to your favorite writers, favorite songs, explore what's in there, take some ideas you like. If it helps you get started, that's not forbidden. And that's one thing that Greg also said to me, is like, I'm trying to say pretty much the way he said it. He said, draw on what's been done before, because if you try to, this is where many people get stuck. If you try to do something that nobody has ever written about, nobody has ever said that way, it's never been done before, it should be completely unique and all that. And that's true for songwriting too. If you try that, first of all, it's going to be super, super hard because so many things have already been said and written and done. And then the other thing is, if you manage to create something that nobody has ever done before like that, it's going to be pretty hard for anyone to relate to that, because we always think about things we've already experienced, and a song reminds us of those emotions and those things. And it's actually easier if there's a similarity to something we already know, right? So I think the idea of trying to create something so out there, so new, is actually not even serving you. So don't be afraid to just do that. Obviously, don't copy and make it your song, but maybe it helps you get started, So yeah, a couple of short tips that I've gathered from talking to exceptional writers, including you, Manel, is don't stop writing. Yeah, accept that most of what you write will suck. Don't try to be perfect. Draft first and keep the flow going. A lot of writing is actually editing. So you draft a very imperfect thing and then you edit it down to what it will become the lyrics. So the majority of writing is actually editing down messy ideas. Always be authentic, be you. Get help from co-writers if you have to or if you want to. Find out what type of writer you are. Music first or melody first. Music, melody first or lyrics first. That's what I'm trying to say. If music first, try to sing nonsense lyrics until it sounds and feels right, and then replace it with real lyrics that match the vibe and carry the right message. And if lyrics first, be open to making changes later on so that it makes musical sense and has the maximum impact. So both can work. Yeah. And, if you're in our coaching program and you have access to Manel's course, you're going to see Manel rap nonsense lyrics, and that alone is worth it, I think. So,
my God.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And then there's the music to support the lyrics, of course. We have full episodes on songwriting tips and tricks that Manel shared with us. Not too long ago, like a couple episodes ago, we did one with, where we showed examples of popular songs, and then also stuff that Manel produced, where we used dramatic pauses and other things you can do. Just as always, be intentional with your musical decisions there if you already know what the song's going to be about. And this can go two ways, by the way. You can have sad lyrics and then make the song also sound sad. That's a thing, of course. Mm-hmm. But you can also do the opposite and maybe achieve an even stronger effect. So there are songs that have sad lyrics but sound pretty happy, which makes it even crazier and more sad in a way. So there's hardly any rules, but it's about playing with these things and exploring that. Use tension and release, things like that to keep the song moving forward and the listener engaged. One thing with a couple of very rare exceptions, I'd say don't just put the lyrics on top, keep it musical. Today I had a conversation with an artist where they were, they wanted to hire me. We talked about it, or we're right now talking about it. We had a conversation today, and their typical process so far was they would write all the instrumentals for all of their songs of the record, and they would finish it all, and they go into all the details with transitions and everything, and it's completely done like an instrumental album. And then they would write lyrics and put them on these songs. And I'm like, you can do that, but are you open to, because you don't have full context yet. And I'm afraid that if you have these fully thought out songs and then you just put lyrics on top of them, it might work, but I see a lot of potential problems there. So in most bands or most songs that I enjoy, it seems like the two go together really well. There are exceptions. One of my favorite punk rock bands is a band called Propaganda from Canada. And yet some of their songs, absolutely, it goes hand in hand, but some of their songs in some parts really seem, and I don't know if it's true, but it sounds to me like they just wrote an essay, like a very scientific, political, super deep, intellectual essay, and they just put that on top of a wild, fast punk rock song, no matter what. And they don't care if the part is over. He will just go on with the lyrics into the break, onto the next part. He's just gonna go through his essay, and the music is just playing to that. That's kind of how it sounds like sometimes to me, and I like that about this band. It's part of their style in a way, but yeah, in most cases, I prefer if the two go together and the music supports the lyrics. I don't know how you feel about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like for me it would be very weird to do what you said, to like do all the instrumentals and then kind of like finish and close the instrumental and then put the lyrics on top, because I like the interaction between the vocals and the instruments. Like sometimes I will basically take a part of the vocal melody and turn it into a guitar thing, so that, or maybe I would react to something that the vocals are doing. So I prefer a process where, there's, you can do the instrumental bit and then a bit of the lyrics, and then, it's back and forth a little bit between both. But at the same time, I don't know, like if that works for you, like who cares?
Yeah. Yeah.
The good thing is that I think we, as songwriters, we need to experiment with different things, because if we always do the same thing, it will always yield similar results. And once you change something, things will change. So I think that's interesting. Like, for example, recently I've been experimenting with new pedals. So I haven't done it yet, but I really want to start working on a song just by playing around with that pedal and getting a different sound that inspire something that I've never done before. So I think the most important thing here is to keep it fresh in terms of the way you work.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And
yeah.
I don't mean you have to change the way you work every time.
No.
But maybe you can have a period of time where, with this album, I'm gonna prioritize the lyrics, or not really prioritizing that, prioritize them. I don't even know if that's a word, but I'm gonna start with the lyrics, and next time I'm gonna start with, the topic, or I don't know, whatever. So,
yeah, I agree. Yeah. How do you feel about this? About this next one here, and this is something I think we haven't talked about really, but I heard it a couple times in songs that I recently listened to, like demos that Ben sent me. And this is, make sure the core message hits hard. What I mean by that is, there's probably the one single most important element of your message or of your story, your song, whatever you're sharing, that is more important than everything else. And this one kind of thing you want to get across, maybe a certain vibe, emotion, story, whatever. And I think you should focus on that and make sure that really hits home, like hits hard and works, instead of like losing the point and telling 10 different stories at the same time, which can lead to the listener losing interest. I've heard a couple of songs where it was like, it started out as a love song and it was like clear that it's about a certain person. And then they went into like all these side stories where it's like, oh, and also this happened and I also was sad because of that. And then whatever, life got in the way here. And then this thing happened. And I was like, now this reads like a biography, but not in a sense, in a way that it makes sense as one cohesive story. And I got lost in all these kind of side quests, and I didn't even get the point of the song anymore. And there's like, or where you are, maybe it's a strong political song, and you are angry about something or against something, and then you lose yourself in all these other adjacent topics that you also want to talk about, that also matter to you, and then your message just becomes so much weaker because you don't stand for anything clearly anymore. It's just this overall, oh yeah, and by the way, this also, and this as well, and you know what I mean? It's like,
yeah,
I think it's important to try and get the core message across in a way and not lose yourself in too many unimportant details. That's kind of the best way to describe it here, and for me. So I don't know how you feel about that, or if you ever had that problem. Maybe it happened to yourself also, that you wrote something and then you kind of missed the point at some point.
Yeah, I think, like, I was thinking about something really similar to this the other day, because it also happens with melodies and musical parts. Sometimes we tend to introduce too many melodies in one song, and sometimes it's about just making the best out of a couple melodies.
Yeah.
The same goes with the lyrics. Maybe it's more about, getting deep into one topic instead of like having many different topics. Because maybe you can, instead of making one song, you can do 5 songs with 5 different topics, right? But yesterday I was driving and I was listening to the last Dream Theater album. And I love it, but it's crazy. Like that they introduce so many crazy things out of nowhere. And, again, it can also work that way.
Yeah.
So it's kind of difficult to give you a definite answer about that. I would say that normally I would tend to go for, less ideas and then get really deep into them. But there are also exceptions to that, even if that's my approach,
Yeah, I agree. I love that. Same is true for music, like you said. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and then as the two go together, as always, you can try adding or creating tasteful sounds and atmospheres to enhance certain words or part of the lyrics. The danger is, you don't want to let it become too cheesy, but there are certain things you can do where, like you said, you like the interaction between the music and the lyrics, and you can do certain things to enhance that. You can do, and it can be cheesy and too obvious sometimes, but it also can be done in a tasteful way. There are some examples where people will argue, well, that was not intentional, that's just coincidence. I don't know if it was, but it works. So there's one example where Ring of Fire, that song, when you sing down, 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 it's like you sing down, but the melody goes up, very obvious, simple thing. I don't know if it's intentional or not. I don't care, but you could do something like that intentionally. Yeah. You could, have certain sounds, impacts at the right time, introducing certain atmosphere and effects. It can almost, some songs can almost be like a movie soundtrack, and it can be awesome. Yeah. Obviously, you can overdo it, but just play with that idea. Maybe you can do something cool there.
Yeah, and also like the way you sing. It's not, if you say, I don't know, if you're talking about pain and you're saying the word pain, it's not the same if you say like pain than if you get your voice distorted and go pain.
Yeah. Pain. I like that.
Pain. I'm sad.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah.
So that's acting basically, right? So.
Oh yeah, a good point. Yeah. Yep. Cool. We're almost done here. The next one would be 2 little things about the arrangement, because we now talked about writing, basically. What I mean with arrangement, I never asked you about this. I never asked your opinion on this. I see, and this is true for professionals, but also amateurs, hobbyists, whoever. Like, I've talked to different people, and I get different answers here, so I don't know what's true. And also on the internet, you'll find different ways of talking about that. So some people will say, some people will call, how do I say this? For some people, arrangement is, when they talk about the arrangement, they mean mainly how you arrange the instruments, similar to someone would when you put an orchestra together, conducting an orchestra, where you put a guitar here and a guitar over there, and you have this layer on top, and then you have the bass, and then you have the drums, and over there's a shaker, and then there's these backing vocals, and you kind of arrange all the instruments, the entire band, so that they play together. And then other people, and that is true that you call this arrangement. It's like the arrangement of the instruments. And then there is another thing where when some people, when they talk about arrangement, they mostly mean how to arrange the song parts. Like, this is the intro, this is the verse, this is the bridge, this is the chorus, this is so and so long, there is a repetition here, whatever. So you're arranging the parts. I think both are true. You can use this word in both ways. But what is arrangement to you when you think about it? Is it both? Is it one or the other? What is arrangement actually to you?
I basically don't use that word.
Okay, yeah, cool. Yeah, fair. Fair. That's part of writing for you.
Sometimes people ask me or talk to me about that word, exactly like arranging or whatever. But I don't know what's the difference between arrangement and production. Like, I don't really know. I
Okay.
would consider both things. Maybe arrangement is something that's sort of in between songwriting and production.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I would think also like arranging, it would be, I don't know, deciding what notes the guitar is going to play. I don't know.
Yeah, that's another way of looking at it.
If the chord is gonna be in this octave or maybe the octave above, because maybe that fits better with the bass. But I'm not thinking about like frequencies or anything like that. It's more like I mean, that's important because that's behind the concept. But I'm only thinking about, I don't know, maybe we need to make space for the vocals because this chord is too high.
Yeah.
And then what you said about the structure, I would say that's also in my mind. That's also arranging. Like, when's maybe we need a bridge here that's missing. Let's do it. Or
interesting. Yeah, I think you asked a different thing. You said, "What's the difference between that and production?" I thought about it of the difference between that and writing, but you're right with what you say. There's also a good question. So to me, and I think that is, and from having worked on so many records and talked to so many other professionals, I think that is what most would agree on to a degree. I think writing, it's hard to define where something starts and ends in this whole process, but like writing for me is really the basic sort of, we have a chord progression, we have a melody, and we have lyrics. That's like the core, the essence of the writing part. Like you have a song by just defining, that is like what's required to have a song. You have certain fundamental like chords or notes that go through it all, like a certain progression. You have, hope in many cases, you have like some sort of lead melody on top. And maybe you could consider a certain rhythm also part of writing, a basic groove, beat, pulse, whatever. But even without that, just by strumming chords or playing chords a certain way and then singing on top of that, you have the skeleton of a song, sort of the essence. That's kind of what I think about writing. And then with that written thing, you can then go one step further and you can add as many or as little, like as few elements as you want to that. And you can turn that very simple thing into the same thing, but now with more instruments that do more additional stuff to help it. And that kind of, to me, is that's where the arrangement part starts. So it's still my song, but I'm now arranging different players, sounds, stuff in a way that it makes it even stronger. And then production to me is actually everything that comes right after writing. So the arrangement is part of production, the recording is part of production, the mixing is part of production. It's the job of a producer to me is to turn a song idea that someone could just write on a piece of paper. You could just write down notes and words and you'd have a song. You don't even have to play. You could do that in theory. And some people do that. So a producer is taking what somebody has written that's on a piece of paper in form of notes and words, and then produces a version that you can listen to. Because those written words and notes, that can be played live, and that is a production. You turn the words into a performance on a stage, that is a live production. You can turn those same words and notes into a production that is recorded, and you can do 100 different ones of that same thing. So that to me is production. It all starts with those words and those notes, but then a producer goes and turns it into a quote unquote product in some way, shape, or form. And that entire process is production to me. And that includes the arrangement, like I said, the sound, the mixing, the mastering, the editing. It's all just part of that production process. It's like someone draws an image of a car, or makes like a small rough model of a car or something, and then somebody goes and like, let's turn this into an actual car, and now they produce it, right? And so that's how I think about it in a way. But hard to define where something starts and ends. I just wanted to hear your opinion, and it's super interesting because what you said about which chords you play and whether or not they get in the way of the vocals and stuff like that, that is arranging too. Like arranging, if you think about the word, just means you put things in a certain spot so that they work together beautifully, and this can be parts, instruments, chords, like.
Yeah, and also things like deciding the. I talk about this every time, but deciding the right key of the song, and the right tempo of the song.
Yeah,
that's arranging.
Yeah,
right. I would say probably.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's go. Let's quickly go over this real quick. So, drums and bass is the first thing. What's the groove? The main when we just to remind you, we have this core, very very shitty, rough draft of a song. Now we think about how can we turn this into something that's more closer to what we are actually going to record. So now we might add to the chords or whatever we have. What's the groove? What's the main pattern thing? And maybe you start with the groove. I'm not saying this is the only way. You can start with the groove and build on top of that. It's just one way of doing it. But it's going to be at some point part of that if you have some sort of groove in there or some sort of percussion element. So what's the main groove here? And I'd say for most bands, if you're doing any sort of rock music, it's important to listen to the guitar riff in many cases, because the reality is that many songs are written on the guitar in that genre. And so, I would rather change the drum pattern to serve the guitar riff that somebody has written than trying to change the guitar riff because the drummer refuses to play something different. It's in most cases, it makes sense that that the song has been written on a guitar riff, and that maybe should dictate what the others do. Not always, but it's good to listen to that at least. Questions like, should the bass lock in with the drums to create a solid foundation, a groove, or does it play a different role in your music? Maybe the bass is just a low-end extension of the guitars, and maybe it doesn't have to lock in with the drums. It just plays along with the strumming pattern of the guitars, depending on the genre and style. But maybe think about what the role of the bass actually is. Maybe it's a melody instrument. Maybe it's a lead thing that is super important and characteristic for the song, or maybe it's just supportive in the background. But what you play and where you put it in the arrangement matters. Is it feels completely different whether you play stuff very low on the E string down there or an octave up. It's the same notes, totally different vibe and impact. So I would say for most bands, if you're playing live and you record real instruments, rehearse just drums and bass only from time to time. We used to do that even with our hardcore punk bands. We sometimes had just drum and bass practices where I played bass, and I would sit down with my drummer in the jam space, and we would just play all of our songs without guitars, just to really focus. I would really focus on the kick patterns. I wanted to nail the impact when a part comes in. I wanted to have this interaction, this solid foundation there. So might be worth doing that from time to time. Are all the drum fills and bass lines that you want to do, are they actually perfectly playable? Or are you trying to do something that you then will struggle to play, and it makes more sense to keep it simpler, but then play it better? That's a thing a lot of bands struggle with. They just try to impress people with their technique, but they don't really have the technique, and then it just falls apart. And so, do some of the fills and licks mask other more important stuff? So, not the entire song has to be this giant drum solo, and you don't always have to play crazy bass licks and riffs all the time. Maybe it gets in the way of what really matters. Would simplifying those things actually help? And as a drummer or bass player, you have a very important job, and your job doesn't become less important if you don't play as much. That's a really important thing. You got to serve the song, and the value of what you contribute to the song is not defined by how complicated it is that what you play. There's lots of good examples that are seemingly super easy and simple, but to play it with that kind of feel is incredibly hard. I would have this ongoing thing in the studio where people would be like, I don't know what people like. Why are people talking about, AC/DC drums and grooves? And this is the most simple, basic thing ever. And I was like, sit down and play Back in Black like that. Good luck. It's of course I can play that song in a way, but I won't play it like that. It's So simple doesn't mean less valuable, not at all. Cool. Then the rhythm tracks, very similar questions. What's the strumming pattern or picking pattern? Does it need to lock in with the drums and bass? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. If the riff came first, which is often the case, maybe adjust the drums and bass accordingly. Maybe do different things, but like be intentional about those things. Try it and see what has more impact. If there's multiple guitars and keyboards, do they lock in with each other? Is it becoming this like wall of sound? Or does it make more sense to play the keys an octave higher or lower, choose a different sound so that it doesn't get in the way with the guitars? Like, it's important. Do you want to hear them separately, or do you want to create this one thing in the mid-range that covers everything? Listen to what everyone else is playing, in terms of rhythm, patterns, and all that. Can complicated chords maybe be split up into root notes and octaves or harmonies for more clarity? Maybe you want to play that really cool chord, but it's more clear if you split it up and do 2 takes. Stuff like that. Additional layers, octaves, harmonies, doubles to make some parts bigger or enhance the vibe of a part. Is there enough space for lead instruments and vocals? Is there enough space in the low end for the bass to be the foundation without everything becoming muddy? Maybe you have keys way down there, you have the bass down there, maybe there's like synth post-production stuff, maybe you have low-tuned guitars, and all of a sudden you have a bunch of stuff going on below 100 or 150 hertz, and it's just this pile of mud down there, and maybe you have to make a decision. Maybe not everything needs to contribute to the low end, and some things need to be intentionally thinner, And it's not a mixing decision. I'm talking about choosing the actual instruments and where you play it. I'm not talking about tones yet. I'm not talking about mixing or even engineering. I'm talking about your favorite topic, Manel, the key and the where you play it, an octave up or down, or intentionally, choosing those, what you actually like, writing a good song, creating a good arrangement. That is just what I'm talking about, regardless of sounds yet. Same with the top end, is there enough space for, or what is going on at the top end? Like, do we really need cymbals and a shaker and a tambourine, and then we also have these like very percussive vocals with a bunch of consonants in them, and all we hear is like from everywhere, Does it really need to be that? Would it be more impactful if everything's dark, but there's this one shaker up there that's really audible, and that is the micro timing thing, and it's like it's much more powerful than having all those super high frequency things? I don't know.
Yeah.
Contrast is a thing, So, and then the final thing, stereo image, super important when you start that kind of process, that kind of arrangement process. What is left? What is right? What is center? Listen to your favorite songs and references and like pay attention to that. A lot of bands don't do that. If you have only one rhythm guitar, don't forget to add doubles if you want a wide stereo mix. Simply copying, by the way, doesn't work. You need to play it twice, or if you don't want to do that, maybe you can come up with a counterpart. Maybe the guitar can be on the left and then a keyboard on the right. Or maybe there's the hi-hat drummer's perspective left and a shaker on the right. So you have these 2 top-end things. I don't know. But like, think about the stereo image and don't just put it together in this like narrow mono stack kind of way that a lot of people think about. Listen to references. That will tell you a lot. And also know that you can go back and forth between these. You can have a narrow verse with 1 guitar and a wide chorus with 2 guitars. You can do all kinds of things, but be intentional and think about, okay, if this is a part, where does it go? Okay, we only have this one, so if it's on one side, the whole mix will be leaning that way. If we put it in the middle, well, now we have kick, snare, and bass, that one instrument, and the vocals. Maybe that's a bit narrow and a big stack where everything gets in the way. So, okay, let's put it on the other side, on one side. But now what do we do with the other one? Now it's empty over there, so can we add another instrument here? Do we leave it empty? Do we double it? Those questions will be easy for you to answer once you go through that process like that. Yeah. And I think in more pop music, when it's not like typical band music, there's this thing that people often call big mono. And I don't know if you do that often, Manel, or if that is, but I know that it's a thing in many popular songs as well, where it's not so much one instrument here and the other one on the right. It's like everything is stereo. There's stereo keys, there's stereo percussion, there's stereo guitars, there's stereo vocals. And like everything is both left and right, but not the same because that would be mono. It's just wide. Everything's doubled pretty much or has some sort of widening. And but sometimes when you do that, when there's no big difference between in terms of different parts and instruments on the left and right, people sometimes refer to that as big mono because it's at the end of the day still pretty much the same on both sides and can be less interesting. I don't know your take on this. I've listened to a lot of popular songs with that in mind, and it's true there are some that are super interesting where there's movement between left and right and difference, and then there's some where it's pretty much just it's stereo, but it's just everything is stereo, and left and right are pretty much the same, just widened.
This is the first time that I've heard about this term, so that's my answer. I don't know, but I don't find it exciting at all. Like, I think a part of my production relies a lot on having little things here and there, things that go from one side to the other. I like having different guitars doing different things in each side.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Big mono doesn't sound
exciting to you. Yeah, I get it. Okay, cool. So and here's the last thing, and I know this is a long episode, so thank you for staying with us. Not everything will be that long. It's just this foundation that covers so many things. The final thing here is like we talked about bass and drums and then the rhythm parts. Now we go to the lead parts. So what is the actual lead melody in each part? Is it vocal, synth, or nothing at all? Because not the vocal doesn't have to be the one lead element all the time. Something else can be the voice. Is it meant to carry emotions? So how does it make you feel? You know, should the lead be up front or should it sit in the mix between all the other instruments? So not always is the lead vocal super up front and on top of the mix. It can become just another instrument tucked in there and still be the lead vocal. So, you know, think about that, how much separation you want. Again, the stereo image is the lead in the center, which in most cases it is, but not always. Are there enough elements to fill out left and right? Do you need to double the rhythm guitar so that the mix doesn't get smaller when the lead kicks in? Should the lead be stereo and doubled? So classic example is you might have a verse with two guitars playing chords, and then you go into the chorus, and then one guitar starts to play a melody to support the lyrics maybe, or they start playing octaves or something. And now the chorus is supposed to be bigger, but it now gets smaller because you lose one of those chord guitars, and they just play single notes, and it sounds smaller. So in that case, going into the chorus, you could just double the other guitar that still plays chords, so the foundation stays the same, and you move the lead guitar to the center, or you double the lead as well, and then you have two kind of things. Just think about those, how the song develops. A lot of two guitar bands, they just play their parts left and right, and they don't think about the fact that their big part is actually sounding smaller than the small part because they change what they play and it falls apart, sort of. So, is there a vocal on top of a lead instrument? How can you make sure they coexist without getting in each other's way? I don't know if that's something you play a lot with, Manel, to like maybe you play the vocal melody on an instrument and blend it with the vocals to support it. Maybe there's call and response and interaction between the two, where you have a vocal line, a synth line, a vocal line, you're going back and forth.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you ever do I rarely do this, but I heard it a couple times where I found it exciting, where something is playing along in a subtle way with the vocals.
Yeah. I've done it probably at some point, but it's not something that I use normally.
Okay, well, yeah. So the lead part is usually the most important thing, so it's often a good idea to make space for it in most of the other elements instead of compromising the lead sound. So if I know that my vocal is going to be the most important thing, or that lead guitar solo is the most important, I'm trying to make space for that, and I would rather take out some of the other elements if there's no space than trying to compromise that kind of lead tone. It's just a matter of priorities. be careful with the low end and top end. It's like clarity is like, you could say that about the mid range too, but clarity is really important. And so mud and rumble are to be avoided, but also it shouldn't sound harsh and annoying. And I'm not talking about the mix again. I'm just talking about a good arrangement of things. Unless it's very intentional, it might not be a good idea to have just a bunch of super dark and low sounding instruments, like, again, unless it's very intentional. And it might also not be a good idea to just have a bunch of super bright instruments with no foundation. Both can be intentional, but in many cases you want the contrast. Something sounds even brighter when there's something darker to compare it to, and vice versa. And you can just add these elements together to create a beautiful arrangement. But also, there are purely dark songs, I get that, and purely bright songs. So just be intentional. Is there a way to enhance it? That's another question, like, with harmonies, octaves below and above, a supporting bass line, a program bass below the actual bass, tasteful drum fills here and there to enhance, parts of the song and transitions, any cool, unique effects you could try, be bold. At the end of the day, like we said, it's your record. You can do whatever you want. But is there like if you have a lead element, we're still talking about lead stuff. If you have a lead element, are there ways you could make that lead even stronger by, like I said, have something lower below it, like a bass line that supports it, have interaction, call and response with drum fills, anything like that. Try to make it as exciting as possible, and try to enhance the lead as much as possible to get the message across and the vibe. And then finally, and this is the again lead stuff, but it's about specifically vocals now. Not any lead instruments, but vocals. Same thing is true. There's vocal layers, doubles, octaves, harmonies. Not everything needs to be there all the time, but these are tools you can try and think about. There are like gang vocals, choirs. There's width and depth. So you can add multiple layers and pan them apart. You can have layers on top of each other and create depth between them. You can use creative vocal effects. A rhythmic delay can become part of the writing if it interacts with the rhythm and how you sing, just like you can do that with guitars. Long reverb tails can become part of the performance almost, because you tend to sing differently. It becomes part of the overall kind of thing. So sometimes the effects are not just a mixing thing. You can think about it even when you're writing, because there are certain very, very dominant effects that without them, everything falls apart. Pitch shifting, all of these things, like an obvious auto-tune effect, or something like vocoders, stuff like that can be just part of the writing almost, because without it doesn't make any sense. So, and then finally we have sort of pads and synth layers that just enhance the atmosphere, where you can think about, okay, what do we already have in terms of core band instruments? Is there space for anything else? And do we need anything else? Maybe there is a hole somewhere that you want to fill. Maybe you have a certain sound of synth or additional layer in mind that fills in the mid-range or the top end or the bottom end, or somewhere where you feel like something's lacking. Maybe it's full range. Maybe you don't need anything at all because your big wall of guitars is already covering everything. What's the purpose? Is it adding to the rhythm, to the melody, to the bass, the width? Does it fill in any kind of gaps in the frequencies? It can open a part. It can add width, and it can beef up thin sounds if it's thick, if it's dark. It can create atmosphere and vibe. It can make a bass line more audible. It can help you feel the bass more if you add a layer on top of that, sort of with synths. It can be subtle and blend well with a track, or obvious and be an element on its own. These are just additional production decisions. And even if those synthesizers are not part of your core band arrangement, maybe you are open enough to try it in your recordings and your production and your arrangement, and add it to enhance what's already there. Maybe not. If you don't want to do that, it's fine. But be careful, because this stuff can really make an arrangement sound muddy and cluttered if you overdo it as well. So some people just love the post-production stuff so much, and adding tons of layers and synths and all that to their arrangements, that to the point where nothing is clear anymore, and it's just this whole, like, this big, muddy, cluttered mess that is very, very hard to mix later on. So yeah, this was a lot, but you can go through this episode step by step again and think about all these questions. Closing thoughts for me here are: is the foundation big enough but not muddy? How tight and defined, or how big and round do you want that to be? Do you want more weight and loose kind of low end, or do you want more or tighter, punchy kind of low end? And I'm not talking about the mix. I'm talking about picking the instruments that actually play there. Do the groove and the rhythm work? Everybody playing the right patterns? Is there a micro timing element like hi-hats, shakers? Does it clash with anything like the strumming guitars? That's also a thing. Strumming guitars can have a high-end percussive element. Maybe you don't need shakers anymore because the guitar is already doing that. Maybe it even gets in the way. Is there an unintentional hole in the frequency spectrum? Do you have bass, low mid-range foundation, mid-range articulation, upper mid-range definition and clarity, and then high-end brilliance and sheen? Do you need all of that? Is it intentional that something's not there? Just like somebody would think about a piece that they write for the orchestra, it's a very similar thing. With an orchestra, you'd make the decision, there's a bass, there's violas, there's violins, there's drums, there's all these different things. Somebody needs to, it's meant to build this beautiful thing as a whole. And you need to make a decision. Do I need all of that all the time? Are there spots where only a part of that is playing? Do I not need something of at all? But like think about it like that when you put your song together. Are there chords, a bass line, background melody or melodic rhythm elements, harmonies, lead vocals, pads? Do you need all of those things? Have you considered those? Which element does what? Do you even need everything? Is it too cluttered? Are the vocals really helping the message? Are the vocal layers really helping the message? Are the important vocal parts big enough or close enough or intelligible enough? These are all questions you can ask yourself. And I'm not saying that every artist and writer always goes through all of these things and tries all of the options. A lot of it is intuitive, of course, and like you just do what feels good, and maybe you don't have to ask yourself any of this. But whenever you get stuck, whenever you don't feel happy about what you have as a raw demo, which is many of you, because I talk to people a lot and they tell me, yeah, I have these songs and I don't know what's missing. They don't sound as exciting as the stuff that I love. If you're in that position and you're not fully happy with that, then you can go to all of these questions and just go through until you find something that could solve your problem. Try that and then move on. It's not meant to be a tutorial that you go through every single time and plan out a song like that. That doesn't work. But whenever you get stuck, know that you have all these options. And if you have a problem, like it sounds harsh, now you have things to try, even without mixing. You can just look at the top end, see what's actually there, maybe remove something. And it's just there to give you a lot of options that you can try whenever you run into a problem or whenever you don't know how to make it more exciting. Yeah. This is definitely going to be the longest one of all these episodes in the series, but I think it's worth it, and I hope you're still with us. And if so, thank you. Manel, I see you're already struggling with your back there for a while.
Yeah.
I'm very sorry for that. I tried to get through this quickly because I see how you're struggling.
No, it's fine.
Do you have any closing thoughts on your end? I went through this rather quickly to not make you suffer any longer, but yeah, these are all things that I asked myself at some point on some productions. Not all of it always at the same time, but it all came up. Now I can go back to those things whenever I feel stuck, kind of, and I've internalized it so that it becomes second nature anyways.
Yep. While you were mentioning all those things, I was thinking about it but you said it at the end, right? That this is not like a to-do list that you need to have every time, but at least you have different, tools or ideas for you to go through if you're stuck.
Yeah. And the main, and also part of the reason why I mentioned it was that for us, we don't need this list because we know that all these things exist, and we hear a song or an idea and we can do these things because we know that's how songs work and that's how they're built. But for someone who's less experienced, where it's not their job, they're just starting out, they might not even know that the acoustic guitar is contributing to the top end. It might become a problem together with the shaker. They might not know that there's a left and right intentional way of placing things in the stereo image. It might sound trivial, to us or whatever, but like I just know that I hear something and I can draw from all these things because I know them. But if you're starting out, and I remember how that felt when I was there, you don't know all these things. So that's also why we see it as kind of you don't need this to-do list, but maybe a lot of people actually need to go through these things and try them once so they really understand what they do, and then you can pick and choose what you need for each production, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So there's plenty of you to go through and think about when you create your next song. And the beautiful thing is, when you have clarity on all of these things and you know exactly what you want to create, how it's supposed to feel, and all the tools you have available in the writing process, then if you take that and then you go from the everything goes, let's experiment phase to the, all right, now let's capture that phase, you can be really intentional and quick because you don't want to lose the initial spark and the good idea by going down rabbit holes and doing a bunch of things where you just get too close to it. You want to now go to, let's get that done as quickly as possible, capture the essence of it, and not second guess ourselves. And without that clear foundation, the whole production process is going to be a long experimental back and forth thing until you don't know what's good anymore. So this is why this is important. And now that you know all these, on the next episodes, we're going to go to the next steps and show you how to actually get that across sonically. So we're going to talk about the gear you need, what matters, what doesn't. We're going to talk about how to capture it in the recording phase. We're going to talk about the final steps of pre-production before you start the recording. We're going to talk about mixing, editing, mastering, all of those things. And we will always go back to these core concepts because our decisions in those other steps are based on what comes out of the speakers, the song, the art, and how it feels. All right. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you, Manel, for sitting there with your back hurting. And also thank you for not correcting me that much or at all, actually. Like, you were pretty much on board. You had a couple of things that I haven't thought about and interesting perspectives, like always. But I feel good that you, for the most part, you were nodding, which I think is a good sign.
Yeah, I didn't see anything that I was like totally, that I would totally disagree with. So
cool. I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Manel. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.